Jump scares are a staple in horror movies, TV shows, video games, and even paranormal videos. They're designed to make you jump out of your seat, to get your heart racing, and to leave a lasting impression that, on the surface, feels like fear. But here's the thing, are jump scares really effective, or are they just a cheap trick used by creators to elicit a quick reaction without having to build genuine suspense or terror? The purpose of this video is to dive deep into the world of jump scares, analyzing whether they truly serve as an effective tool in horror and suspense, or if they're just a lazy shortcut that cheapens the experience. And we'll be exploring not just the mechanics of how jump scares work, but also why they're so prevalent, how they manipulate our emotions, and whether they actually add value to the stories they're a part of. By the end of this video, I hope to provide you with a more critical lens through which to view jump scares, helping you to see when they're being used effectively and when they're just being used as a crutch. Now, I'm not here to argue that all jump scares are bad. In fact, when used sparingly and with intention, overused and underwhelming, relying on loud noises, sudden movements, or quick cuts to jolt the audience without any real substance behind them. This over-reliance on jump scares can dilute their impact, turning what should be a moment of genuine fear into something that feels cheap and unearned. One of the biggest issues with jump scares is that they are a form of what I like to call fear manipulation. They don't scare you in a deep psychological sense, they scare you in a purely physiological one. Your body's natural response to a sudden loud noise or a quick movement in your peripheral vision is to flinch, to tense up, and to experience a spike in adrenaline. This is a survival mechanism hardwired into our brains to help us react quickly to potential threats, but just because something makes you jump doesn't mean it's truly frightening. It's a temporary surface-level reaction that doesn't necessarily leave you with a lingering sense of dread or unease. The kind of fear that really stays with you after the lights come back on. Another problem with jump scares is that they can be incredibly predictable. Once you've seen enough horror movies or played enough scary video games, you start to recognize the patterns. The music drops to a low hum, the camera angle changes to a tight close-up, the character is slowly approaching a door or turning a corner, and you just know something's going to pop out. This predictability can actually undermine the effectiveness of the jump scare, because instead of being caught off guard, you're sitting there bracing yourself, waiting for it to happen, and when it finally does, instead of feeling a rush of fear, you might just feel a sense of relief that it's over, or even a bit of frustration at how formulaic it all feels. The overuse of jump scares can also detract from the storytelling. When a movie or a game relies too heavily on jump scares, it can feel like the creators are using them as a shortcut instead of taking the time to build tension, atmosphere, and character development. A truly scary scene doesn't need a jump scare to be effective. It can be terrifying simply because of the mood that's been established, the stakes that have been raised, and the connection you feel with the characters. When you care about the characters and understand the world they're in, even a subtle, quiet moment can be filled with dread, but when a jump scare is thrown in just for the sake of it, it can feel cheap and out of place, breaking the immersion and pulling you out of the story.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
By the end of this video, my goal is to help you see jump scares for what they really are, a tool like any other that can be used effectively or ineffectively. Jump scares may feel like a modern invention, especially with today's advanced special effects and sound design, but their roots go back much further than most people realize. In fact, the concept of the jump scare has been a part of cinema almost since the beginning. Early filmmakers quickly recognized the potential of film as a medium to startle and surprise audiences, even in the silent film era when they didn't have the luxury of sound to enhance the effect. In early cinema, jump scares were created primarily through clever editing and visual surprises. Without sound, filmmakers had to rely on the visual impact alone to startle their audiences. One of the earliest examples comes from the 1925 film The Phantom of the Opera, starring Lon Chaney. There's a famous scene where the Phantom's mask is removed, revealing his ghastly, disfigured face. The sudden cut to this horrifying image was enough to cause audiences to jump in their seats. A silent-era jump scare, if you will. Another early example is in The Cat and the Canary, 1927, a silent horror comedy film directed by Paul Linney. The film is filled with sudden visual shocks designed to unnerve the audience. Even though these films didn't have sound, they effectively utilized the visual language of cinema to create startling moments. The lack of sound actually forced directors to be more creative with their use of lighting, makeup, and editing to achieve the same effect that modern filmmakers might rely on sound for. For instance, sudden changes in lighting, like a flash of light revealing something creepy in the shadows or a quick, unexpected cut to a disturbing image, were techniques that could deliver a similar shock to the audience. These early jump scares were also often tied to the gothic and horror themes popular in silent films, which focused heavily on creating an eerie atmosphere. Because the medium was still new, audiences were more easily startled by these visual tricks, and filmmakers quickly learned to exploit that. Another key factor in the effectiveness of jump scares during this period was the element of surprise in an era where audiences were less familiar with cinematic techniques. Without the tropes and patterns that modern viewers have come to expect, early filmgoers were more susceptible to being genuinely shocked by sudden, unexpected images. Sound entered the picture with the advent of talkies. Jump scares would become even more sophisticated and impactful, but the foundation was laid during the silent era. These early examples demonstrate that even in the absence of sound, the fundamental principles of the jump scare, timing, surprise, and visual shock, were already being effectively used to startle and engage audiences. The jump scare has evolved significantly since its early beginnings in silent films, adapting to changes in technology, audience expectations, and storytelling techniques. From the introduction of sound to the rise of television and the modern era of digital effects, each stage of film and television history has seen the jump scare develop in new and interesting ways. The arrival of sound in cinema marked a major turning point in the evolution of the jump scare. Suddenly, filmmakers had a new tool to manipulate and startle their audiences. The early talkies were quick to exploit this, using sudden loud noises, unexpected dialogue, or eerie music cues to create moments of shock. One of the most iconic examples from this period is in the 1931 film Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. The combination of eerie silence, sudden musical stings, and Lugosi's haunting presence created an atmosphere ripe for sudden shocks. The advent of sound also allowed for the development of what we now recognize as the classic sting, a sudden burst of music or sound that accompanies a jump scare. This technique would become a staple of horror cinema, adding an auditory layer to the visual shock that had been the sole domain of silent films. During the golden age of horror, jump scares became more refined and integral to the storytelling process. Films like Frankenstein, 1931, and The Wolfman, 1941, used sound and visual surprises to build tension and deliver frights. In these films, the jump scare often served as a climactic moment, releasing the tension that had been building up through the use of suspenseful music and atmospheric settings. The 1950s saw the rise of the monster movie, where jump scares were used to introduce creatures or to punctuate moments of terror. Films like Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954, made effective use of sudden appearances by the titular creature, often accompanied by a dramatic musical sting to jolt the audience. The 1960s and 1970s brought a new level of sophistication to the jump scare as filmmakers began to explore psychological horror and more intense, visceral forms of fear. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, (1960) is a prime example of this evolution. The infamous shower scene is not just a jump scare, but a masterclass in building tension and using editing, sound, and framing to create an unforgettable moment of shock. The suddenness of the attack, combined with the screeching violins of Bernard Herrmann's score, epitomizes the jump scare as a tool for maximum impact. The 1970s also saw the rise of the slasher genre, which would heavily rely on jump scares to keep audiences on edge. Films like Halloween, 1978, and Friday the 13th, Part 2, 1981, popularized the use of the false scare, where the tension builds, the music crescendos, but the scare turns out to be something benign, only for the real scare to follow immediately after. This bait-and-switch technique became a hallmark of the genre, creating a roller coaster of tension and release that audiences came to expect. With the advent of digital technology and CGI in the 1990s, jump scares became even more elaborate. Filmmakers could now create more realistic and terrifying monsters, ghosts, and other entities to pop out at the audience. Movies like The Ring, 2002, Paranormal Activity, 2007, took advantage of these advancements, using jump scares not just as isolated moments, but as central elements of their narrative structure. Television also began to play a larger role in the development of the jump scare during this period. Shows like The X-Files and Supernatural used jump scares to great effect, often leveraging the episodic format to keep viewers in a constant state of suspense. In the current era, jump scares have become so ingrained in horror that they are sometimes criticized for being overused or predictable. However, when used effectively, as in It Follows in 2014 or Hereditary in 2018, they can still deliver powerful moments of fear that resonate with audiences. These films often subvert expectations, using jump scares in more subtle and psychologically disturbing ways, proving that even in an era of CGI and digital effects, the basic principles of timing, surprise, and tension remain the core of a successful jump scare. Throughout these different eras, the jump scare has remained a versatile and enduring tool in the horror genre. While the techniques and technologies may have changed, the underlying goal, to startle and scare the audience, has remained the same. Whether through the simple shock of a sudden image in a silent film, or the complex multi-sensory experience of a modern horror movie, the jump scare continues to evolve, adapting to new mediums and audience expectations. Technology has played a crucial role in shaping the use and effectiveness of jump scares throughout the history of film and television. From the introduction of synchronized sound
Kate, stand still. Don't move.
to the rise of digital effects and immersive audio, technological advancements have consistently provided filmmakers with new tools to startle and scare audiences. The introduction of synchronized sound in the late 1920s revolutionized the way jump scares were delivered. Before sound, silent films relied solely on visual cues and editing techniques to create moments of shock. However, the addition of sound opened up a whole new dimension for filmmakers to explore. Sudden loud noises, eerie music cues, and unexpected dialogue could now be used to jolt the audience, making the jump scare a more multi-sensory experience. And one of the most iconic uses of sound in early jump scares is the sting, a sudden burst of music or sound that accompanies a shocking visual. This technique quickly became a staple in horror films as it allowed filmmakers to manipulate the audience's emotions more directly. The combination of visual surprise and auditory shock created a more intense and immersive experience, making the scares more effective and memorable. As special effects technology advanced, so too did the possibilities for creating more elaborate and terrifying jump scares. Practical effects such as animatronics, prosthetics, and makeup allowed filmmakers to bring monsters, ghosts, and other creatures to life in ways that were previously unimaginable. These effects could be used to create sudden, realistic appearances that would shock and horrify audiences. For example, the use of practical effects in films like An American Werewolf in London, 1981, and The Thing, 1982, led to some of the most memorable jump scares in horror history. The realism of the creatures and the shock of their sudden appearances were made possible by the advancements in practical effects, which gave filmmakers the tools to create more convincing and terrifying scares. The advent of computer-generated imagery, CGI, in the 1990s marked another significant leap in the evolution of jump scares. CGI allowed for the creation of more complex and visually stunning scares that could not have been achieved with practical effects alone. Ghosts, demons, and other supernatural entities could now be rendered with a level of detail and fluidity that made their sudden appearances even more startling. Utilized CGI to create eerie, otherworldly figures that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, delivering some of the most effective jump scares of the time. The ability to seamlessly integrate these digital entities into live-action footage gave filmmakers greater flexibility in crafting scares that were both surprising and visually impressive. The development of surround sound and immersive audio technologies has also had a profound impact on the effectiveness of jump scares. These advancements allow filmmakers to place sounds in specific locations within the auditory space, creating a more realistic and enveloping experience for the audience. Sounds can now come from behind, above, or to the side, catching viewers off guard and heightening the sense of immersion. This definition, HD, and the use of 3D technology have also influenced the way jump scares are crafted. HD allows for greater clarity and detail in the visuals, making sudden appearances more striking and realistic. Audiences can now see every detail of a creature's face or a ghostly figure's movement, which enhances the shock value of the scare. Advancements in editing software and post-production techniques have also played a significant role in the evolution of jump scares. Filmmakers can now manipulate footage in ways that were not possible in the past, allowing for more precise timing and execution of scares. Digital editing tools enable filmmakers to craft jump scares with perfect timing, ensuring that the scare lands at exactly the right moment for maximum impact. Post-production effects such as digital enhancements, color grading, and sound design can also be used to heighten the intensity of a jump scare. For example, a scene might be darkened or desaturated to create a more ominous atmosphere, or a sound effect might be amplified to make the scare more jarring. These tools give filmmakers greater control over the final product, allowing them to fine-tune the scares to achieve the desired effect. In conclusion, technological advancements have played a pivotal role in shaping the evolution of jump scares. From the introduction of sound to the rise of CGI and immersive audio, each new development has provided filmmakers with new tools to create more effective and terrifying scares. As technology continues to advance, we can expect jump scares to evolve further, finding new ways to surprise and scare audiences in increasingly sophisticated and immersive ways.
My house! May God have mercy on your soul!
Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive into the world of jump scares. Originally, I intended to release this as one long video, but after seeing how much time and effort it took to produce just this first part, I realized that rushing the rest wouldn't do it justice. So, I've decided to release the video essay in segments, each one carefully crafted to give you the most insightful analysis possible. Once the final part is out, I'll compile them all into one fully unabridged video for those who prefer to binge watch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon with the next installment. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out.